You know, a lot of times you've heard the statement that if I would have known then what I know now, I would have made a lot of different choices and changes and decisions in my life. A lot of times when we're thinking back to our 20s and 30s, we made decisions based out of our fear or inability to think we could go beyond the actual capacity of what we were able to do. And then in our 40s and 50s, we all of a sudden recognize, man, I can do a lot more when it comes to my leadership, my work, my ability, my character. And on most of you guys are great people with high levels of character, with a huge amount of trust and value. You bring so much to the table, to life. And a lot of times we have been placed in this container, and what I call the law of the lid has been applied to your life. And in just a moment, I'm going to teach you 3 ways to break through that law of the lid, to live your best life beyond 65 years of age unto death. And you're really living in the last quarter of your life and can do exceptionally great things. Maybe you didn't do it in your 20s, maybe you didn't do it in your 30s, maybe 40s and 50s have flown by. Now all of a sudden you're facing the last quarter century of your life, and you're thinking, is my life really having an impact, and can I really make a change? And in just a moment, I'm going to cover exactly what you can do and how to move forward and make a change by busting through the law of the lid. Be back in just a second. All right, guys, so first thing I want to be able to kind of explain to you is what is the law of the lid, and exactly framing that around how our life works. The law of the lid is actually a book that was written by a great guy named John Maxwell. Some of you guys may have heard. John Maxwell, he talks and writes about leadership books. And the law of the lid is basically a concept of, if you take fleas and put them into a jar and you put a lid on top of the jar, the fleas will only jump to the lid, and they will actually continue to jump and bounce and then begin to only jump high enough not to hit the lid. And so then you can remove the lid and the fleas will continue to only jump to the height of what they've trained their brain to jump to. They will not ever jump out of the jar. And we see this a lot of times with people. We maybe have had an upbringing, maybe parents, maybe siblings, maybe abuse, maybe a husband, a spouse. There's been some kind of trauma or traumatic event growing up. There's been some type of calamity. And all of a sudden we put ourselves in a jar. There's a lid placed on us by somebody else. And sometimes we train ourselves to jump only as high enough that we don't hit our head against the lid. And they could literally, that person could be removed out of your life. Maybe they died. Maybe it was a dad that was abusive and he's died, and you're jumping only to this height. And you always look at yourself when it comes to your self-worth, your self-value, or whatever it may be that you're dealing with. And we'll do additional videos and things like this. I really like to talk about life applications when it affects people who are 65 and older, and how you can move forward into the last quarter century of your life and really make progress, not be perfect, but make progress and really grow as a person and really do exceptionally great things in your last quarter century of your life. So this law of the lid is explained by a jar with fleas with a lid on top of it. The reality is, I've been in the jar before. I've had people place limitations on me, and then once those limitations, when I really realized, you know what? That person's not involved in my life. That person has no value to me. That person can't determine whether or not I can jump out of the jar or stack 10 jars and jump out of 10 jars, whatever it may be. There is no lid to you. So one of the things that we want to be able to do is reframe. The first steps in the 3 steps to remove the lid mindset is reframing your story. So shifting from past to present. The past does not define your present day and the reality of your future. Whatever happens in the past is in the past. There's a reason why the rear view mirror is this size and the front windshield that we're looking out of is this side. There's a lot more opportunity looking out ahead than looking in the rear view mirror and creating ourselves what I would say the victim's mindset. Life has happened to me, therefore I can't, and we make an excuse for what we can't do. As opposed to saying, you know what, this has happened to me, but it's actually made me a greater person, made me an overcomer, made me a more resilient person, a greater leader, whatever things that happen.